Alrighty guys, hi, it's Amanda. I am back for another video, and today I am going to be discussing, I believe it's part 3, maybe 4, of my experience growing up in foster care and leading into adoption. If you're new to this channel, if you could go ahead and like and subscribe. If you have any questions or comments, go ahead and leave them down in the comment section. I do try to engage as much as possible. I do want to thank everybody who's here and who has been providing me support. It means a lot to me. As I move on into discussing everything, I do want to put a trigger warning here in case you are sensitive. I may refer to abuse and neglect of children, as that's kind of what brings me into foster care. We're kind of out of the thick of that at this point, but it may be referenced, so I just want that to be known. If you're new to my channel and watching these videos, I do typically do my makeup. I have noticed, however, that I do kind of focus more on my makeup at times than the story or me expressing myself, because I want it to be as genuine as possible. So in today's video, if I don't complete my makeup, I am not going to worry about it. If there's an area where I need to stop and focus and just discuss it with you guys to get through it, that is what I'm going to do. I have already done my foundation and my eyebrows, which I know they look like cousins and not sisters. So you can let me know that down below, maybe how to do a better job, because these look a little silly, but I did the best I could. So if you haven't watched my other videos, I am just gonna pick up where I left off. I'm probably gonna do a little slight recap here. So in the last video we left off, I believe I had either stated or just paused short of this part. I am at the end of 3rd grade. I primarily discussed like my emotions and what I had been facing kind of internally up until this point. So I had already kind of made up the decision that I probably was not going to return to my biological family. I was aware enough to know that things were not going well for them. So I had already kind of given up the idea of going back to my biological family. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but this last foster home that I ended up in, this was my final foster home. It's a single woman household, which to me was probably what was in my better interest at that time, because I had been struggling with other children in homes acting out behaviorally, because I found it very hard to make a connection with anybody at this point in my life, because I was struggling with so much internally, and I really was not open about it. I really did not discuss what I was feeling and how defeated I really felt. And I'm a young kid at this point, really feeling like everyone has given up on me. I had been from home to home to home, which is expected in foster care, but as a child, you don't know any different. I had come to the realization that I probably wasn't going to be with my biological family. They were not making any kind of progress in their ongoing issues. So the state is not going to return a child if there's no change in the household. And there really wasn't any change occurring. So going into this last foster home, I was already struggling internally. And going in, I felt scared, not knowing anything, not knowing anybody, because at this time I've moved areas slightly, so any friends that I potentially had or knew in school, I no longer was going to have any kind of normalcy. A new home, a new parent, which was a foster parent, new school, new students, new everything. Everything was going to be brand new. In the past, I had primarily stayed in the same area, so the school was still the same, so I still kind of saw the same kids. And so that was adding another layer onto what I was already kind of dealing with. So when I went into this home, I was not, from what I remember, I was not very open. I was very closed off. I didn't really want to discuss anything. I just kind of was rolling through the punches, just living life as kind of like a robot, just doing what I was told. And with this home, this foster mother was pretty strict. She had rules and she expected me to follow them, which, going from homes that had multiple children and parents who weren't always focused on the foster children, was different for me. It was difficult for me. She was really doing what was in my best interest, but as a third grader, you don't know any different. When you've been uprooted and had suffered as much trauma as I had and not had any connection with anybody, it was really hard to adjust to her lifestyle, which is really what it turns out to be. When children are put in homes, they kind of are expected to adjust to that family's lifestyle and deal with it. I mean, that sounds terrible, but it is reality. When children are placed with families, those families aren't expected to stop living how they were living just because they have a foster child. Most families are accommodating and get as much information as possible. And I'm not saying that this foster mom did not do that, but I am saying that there were aspects that I had not really been provided, that I was now being provided and being held accountable. And I struggled with that. So going into her home, she had a friend who was a teacher that just so happened to be the grade I was going into. And I've not checked, so I don't know if she did this to figure out where I was academically, to see if I was on track or areas that I maybe needed more focus, or if it was to see how I was outside of the household. I'm sure it's a combination of things, but she was very close to this third grade teacher. And she put me in her class, and this woman, this teacher, was super friendly. She had a great connection with her students and really did everything that she could to make me feel comfortable, because I went in at the end of the year. There was like a semester left maybe. So I went into this class. I did struggle, and I don't know if either one of them are aware, but I did struggle still with being bullied. As I mentioned in my last video, when you go from different schools or different homes, or kids just out of curiosity ask you things, I did get bullied. And I don't think they were fully aware that I was getting bullied, because looking back, I think they maybe would have said something, or some kind of official would have stepped in, but I kind of kept to myself. And I do know I kind of tattled here and there just because I was trying to get attention. So I would do something and then blame it on another kid, or do something silly and then say it wasn't me, just to try and get attention. And that's part of what a lot of foster children face, because you're lacking that attention from adults, you're lacking that attention from your peers, that you're just going to act out because it's the only way you know that you're going to get the attention. So I know I struggled with that. This foster home, she provided me over the years everything that I could have probably wanted. I was with her for 2.5 years in total, maybe a little bit longer. I might be a little off on my timing, but I was with her for quite a while. And as time progressed, I started to trust her. I really became bonded with her. She got permission to take me on trips, so we would go on trips. One of the things I had always wanted to do was to go horseback riding, and I might get emotional in this video, and I apologize if I do. But this one's kind of one of the harder ones for me to talk about. But she did. She took me horseback riding, which was something I had always wanted to do. So it was really cool to have that experience. She taught me so many things. And for once in my life, seriously, in my whole life up until this point, I felt like I belonged. And it's beautiful, but it's also really kind of unfortunate how things end up playing out. She continued to care for me. She provided me everything. I mean, of course, there were some downsides, but none of them really stick out to a point that I would be conducive to this. Normal punishment. I was never over punished in her home. No weird punishments, nothing like that. There was one time that she let me paint my nails on her carpet, or at least I think she did. And I know I spilt the nail polish, and then that was an overreaction on her part. And so that's like the main punishment I remember. But she would always take me to do stuff. And when you're in foster care, most foster families don't always have that ability. They either have multiple children in their home or they have their own children, and it's just too much to do. But being the only child in her home, she was able to spoil me, and she did. I was always the center of attention with her friends. I was always, able to kind of get away with silly things because I was usually one of the only kids there. Now, like I said at the beginning, she was friends with the teacher she placed me in her class in 3rd grade. And she has some children. And anytime they did any family activities or anything, she would always be invited. Well, her and I would be invited. So we got really close to this family. And as close as I probably could have gotten to anybody outside of her, because she was the first person that I had trusted in a very long time. And trust is hard to come by when you're in foster care, because you have been uprooted so many times, and the people that you trust and want to be with, in the long run, what it feels like, at least to me, what it did, was they always let me down, because I always ended up going to another home. I always ended up doing something wrong that they couldn't handle. I always was never there long term. So this was the first time that I really felt, this is it. This is it. I finally found my house. I finally found where I'm gonna be the rest of my life. That was what I was thinking inside, like in my head. That's how I was feeling. That's how I was interpreting everything. And then it came to a point where my foster mother, told me her intention was to adopt me. And I couldn't tell you how I felt. Literally, words can't describe. When you're in foster care and you're old enough to kind of understand things as I had started to, it was the best news ever. Finally, I am not going to have to start over. Finally, I'm always going to have a house. Finally, I'm always going to have somebody who loves me. Finally, I'm going to be able to say I have a mom and not a foster mom. Finally, I'm going to be able to do normal things, normal kid things, not have to get permission to go on a trip. Because when you are a ward of the state, permission has to be approved for you to go anywhere. So all of these emotions just were undescribable on how happy and elated I was. And unfortunately, and to any foster mom who may be watching this, or anybody thinking about being a foster mom, don't tell kids that. Don't. Because it didn't work out. And I am still in contact with her to an extent. And I've never asked her because it's something, frankly, I don't even care about. Because at the end of the day, she broke my dreams and my heart and my will in a lot of ways as a little kid. And I know her. I know that was not her intention. But I just want that to be a warning to anybody who is in this field. Do not say things or promise things to these children that are not going to happen, or that you don't know if it's going to happen. Because adoption in the States, and especially in the state I was in, Florida, is very strenuous. And you do not need to jump the gun to try and make your connection with the child better. Because I can tell you now, obviously from personal experience, it doesn't work out for you. It doesn't. And I can't tell you how long that I had to struggle with that. And honestly, in some aspects, I still probably struggle with it to this day. I have a very straightforward personality because I don't want people to play with me. I don't want people to not take advantage of me. That's not the right word. I don't want people to waste my time, is the nicest way that I can put it. Because all of those times after she said that, my time was wasted because I was so hopeful and so set on everything and thinking of my future and with her as my mom and planning things and just trying to make sense of what my life was going to be like now. Now that I have a forever home, what is my life going to be like? Well, it's definitely going to be stable, and that's something I hadn't had. I finally trusted an adult. I finally loved an adult because I hadn't for a very long time. I finally loved an adult unconditionally without expecting anything back. But as I said, it didn't work out. For what reason, I don't know. I still don't know to this day. But it was a tough time. And what makes this even harder, what makes it emotional for me, is she never had that conversation with me. So if you're going to have conversations with children who have experienced trauma or are in the situation I was in where you're in foster care, conversation is needed. Honesty is needed. False hope is not. False hope does nothing but tear the child down inside. And it's unfortunate because people don't want to tell children how poorly their parents are doing. And I'm not saying give them all of the information, but don't give them false hope. Don't say, oh, they'll come around, because you don't know. You don't know what other people are going to do. So the conversation was never had with me that whatever her choice was to not adopt me, I had been in her home for 2.5 years, and I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was something I did. I don't know if it was something on her end. Even as an adult who still has the ability, this kind of goes to show, and I know I'm ranting at this point a little bit, but this just goes to show how much it can affect kids in their adult years, is I have the ability to address this 100%. And I, don't want to know, because even if it's like the most innocent reason, it's not going to take away the hurt. It's not going to take away the frustration. I mean, I love her still to this day. I do. But I'm not going to lie. I resent her. And at the end of the day, I think she knows that. And I hate that. I wish that didn't exist. But if she hadn't taken the action she did to an innocent child and said things that she did, this wouldn't have been an issue. This would have just been an easy another little part for me to just kind of go through. But unfortunately, I think it's been one of the only parts where I have choked up and I have almost cried, because it did affect me that much. It really did. And if you are watching, I do love you. I'm not mad at you, but it is what it is. And I've moved on from it, although it's hard to talk about because this is an area I don't talk about often, because it is just so sensitive. But I just want that to be kept in mind. If you ever come in contact in any way with a child who's in foster care or not in the care of their biological parents, for whatever reason it may be, just be honest and compassionate with them and don't give false hope. As adults, we don't want false hope, but these children have already suffered through enough. They've already experienced some form of trauma, and providing them false hope is only going to be detrimental. So guys, that is going to be it for my part 3. I intend to have Mondays and either Thursday or Friday as the days I upload the parts to my story. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, one or both days will just be other content. So if you're interested in anything else, I've kind of started doing a little bit of commentary. So if any of that is interesting to you, go ahead and like and subscribe. I know I'm leaving on a sad note, but the next part will be much happier, but still probably full of tears, but it will be better. But this is the reality, unfortunately. And I'm an adult able to speak my story because I've had so many years to process it. When kids are in the thick of it, they really can't even articulate what they're going through. And that's something that as professionals that need to be kept in mind. And that's myself included. I have worked in the child welfare system. I did for 2.5 years. Eventually, I'm sure I will get back in it. But with the move and everything, it just wasn't conducive here. So if you are interested in any kind of, I've had a couple of questions to cover particular areas as far as working in the child welfare system and how things work. Again, I can only speak from what I have experienced and what I have witnessed, and all of that is going to be in the state of Florida. Different states operate differently, but if you want something as a foundation or you're in Florida and you want to know something, just leave it down below, and I of course will do the best I can to make videos for you guys. But I guess that's going to be it at this point. I'm just kind of rambling, so I appreciate your time today, and I will see you next time. Bye.